Okay, so we should be live. I'm getting everything working on YouTube and Instagram. This is kind of like a crowded workspace a bit, so forgive me for, I have two cameras going on here. We're gonna get this sorted out. And if I put chapstick on, forgive my humanity. It's very dry. And I don't want to lick my lips like a weirdo on stream. So, hello. You already have one on Instagram. And one on YouTube. Say hi in the chat if you're here. Just so I know, who's here. I know we had, great engagement last night. And if I'm not looking at you, by the way, there's a camera here and there's a camera here, and I'll try and split it up. But we had great engagement last night, and I predict that this is really going to grow. So pretty stoked about it. Even if there's 15 people that join, it's going to be pretty awesome. The pattern behind me, I definitely can explain this. So I will in a minute. It's probably the best tool for teaching physics other than dominoes. But not just physics, but perspective. And that's, I've said before, and this is very important to understand, is that philosophy fundamentally is the study of perspective. And because everything is fundamentally based on consciousness, everything is about perspective. Politics is about perspective. What I'm going to show you with that is about perspective. Morality is not, it's objective, but perceiving it is about perspective. So, everything in physics is about perspective. So, I am going to show you, looks like we have some people on here, but you did ask, so I'll probably touch on it again. But this thing is called the connectria, and it looks a lot like my, what I call the verse model, but it's essentially an aeon. And it's like a little kinetic sculpture. And it targeted me in an ad, and I bought it. It took forever to get here, too. But what is cool about it is it looks exactly like my structure. And every single structure that is important in physics and in my verse model is found here. So basically, people talk about Schrodinger's cat. It's like, put a cat in a box and it's dead and alive at the same time. And the people who are saying that don't really understand what they're talking about. Where did you buy it from? I can send you the link. It came up on an Instagram ad, but I think it should be connectria.com. I think. But it's with a connectria with a K. I think it's it's in a language that is some European language. It came from Europe, so I don't know exactly where. But it's very cool because this shows the concept of superposition and the objective structures in the universe, and it shows the importance of perspective. So I can show you this by holding it up and asking, do you see the square? Yes, you see the square. Next question, do you see the squares? Multiple. Yes. Do you see the wave? Right there. Yes. And do you see the double helix in the center when I spin it like that? And yeah, you do. So what is this structure? Is it a square? Is it squares? Is it a wave of multiplicity of squares? Or is it a double helix? A self-referencing chain of information. It's all of them at once. And this is you, this is the universe, this is every quantum of consciousness that exists. And it shows the importance of perspective when asking a question, and it will dictate what you see. So the double slit experiment is is it a particle? Is it a wave? It's both. This is a particle, it is a wave, it is a double helix, it is a multiplicity, it is a singularity. It's all of those things at once. And it just shows superposition really well. And what's interesting is that it's 4 questions. And what I really want to talk about tonight is like, what's wrong with everything? What's wrong with all of our institutions? And it has to do with the fact that we are stuck in relativity. Everything is relative. There is no ability to make sense of this. So what there really is there's basically like 3 places you could be. You could be in relativity, where everything is smooth and continuous and connected, and it's all a spectrum, and there is no objectivity. Everything is about faster and bigger and space and time. And the reality is that on the other side of this, you have complete objectivity, which is oneness. And you can't really do anything with this either, even though it's important to know. And then in between this, there is multiplicity. And this is where we want to get to, because this is the space that we want to be in order to start seeing an objective structure and pattern that is consistent on all levels of existence, from politics to physics to sociology and mathematics. They're all hard sciences. Sociology is as much a hard science as physics. It's just we don't have the right perspective. And so one of the things that was my major discovery, I guess, and lots of people have seen that 4 is the number of stability in physics, and in there's 4 fundamental forces and all kinds of other instances of 4, and the tetragrammaton in the Bible is the name of God. Essentially, it's a 4-letter word, and the tetrahedron which is this. It's basically the geometric representation of a consciousness, because it's 4-sided shape, and it's directional, so you can point it. It can point at things, and this this pattern has been seen by others. But what's important is when you're trying to discuss a theory of everything, which can actually make sense of everything, essentially, for the most part, is you have to put it in a language that people can understand. And so one of what I tried to do when I was trying to do this years ago was I came to this, which is what I call the 4 primary perspectives. And this is the most important thing to understand when you're trying to make sense of the world. And it's also, and that includes everything. It doesn't matter what you're trying to make sense of. Okay, so this is the 4 primary perspectives. If you're on Instagram, I have to hold the camera, sorry. But if you're on YouTube, you get to see it much cleaner, and it's on OBS and stuff, which is kind of nice. By the way, if you're in the chat and the audio is bad or it's glitchy or something, let me know. Also, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat and I will get to them at some point. But these are the 4 primary perspectives, and they are inside, outside, separate, and oneness. These 4 perspectives describe all relationships in the universe, all of them, whether that is with you and another person, or us and our country, or us and our family, or a neutron in a nucleus. It doesn't matter. These perspectives are the starting point of branching away from the nonsense that we have been in and making sense of it. And it doesn't, like I said, it does not matter the field at all. So these 4 perspectives are inside, outside, separate, and oneness, and I have the definitions of each below. So inside is separate and oneness. Outside is separate from oneness. Separate is outside of oneness. And oneness is outside of separateness. And these are the starting point of everything that I've done with all my models, you use them to create the quantum of consciousness model, which is a model of all consciousness, which is even, which is this. And it's a 3x3 grid looking at itself in the mirror and seeing 3x3 in its calculation. So, and it's all calculating. And then that goes on to form this, which is the universe, right here. And this is, how God created the universe. So, and I'll get into that. But basically, like, what you need to know is to make sense of everything that exists within the realm of multiplicity in the universe, but still in kind of like outside of this relativistic space where it's like, do knives exist? Do cars exist? No. This is where you're stuck in relativity and space-time, and it's not going to help you make sense of the world. But like I said, you want to get to this place of multiplicity where there's still relationships, but there's also objectivity to some degree. So you have quarks, which are assemblies of information and energy, hadrons, which are protons and neutrons, which are assemblies of quarks. You have atoms. And by the way, like, if you're not into physics, wait till I show you why this is you in a minute. And atoms are assembly of hadrons. Molecules are an assembly of atoms. Cells are assembly of molecules. Organisms are assemblies of cells, which is where you are and I am. But I'm going to show you guys why you are, if you are a man, you are a proton, and if you are a woman, you are a neutron. But so if you're married, your marriage is literally, it's not like an atom, it is an atom. And then it goes on to a family is an assembly of organisms, a caste is an assembly of families, and technology or a nation is, which is, technological cohesiveness is an assembly of castes. And basically then it restarts and runs the simulation again inside itself. So we're running on a quantum computer inside of the previous universe. That is how, it's not a big bang. It was a conception, like literally a conception, like you were conceived and like a little human grew inside another human. That's exactly what happens with universes, but it happens on quantum computers in previous civilizations, running simulations, but they're not really simulations, they're replications. And this is really inside of the one above it, but I couldn't represent that in Excel, so I put it below. But you can see that it starts with 4. It ends with 4. And not only does it start with 4 and end with 4, but objectively, the center is 4. It's not even just 4. Its sum is 8, but it's 4 as the count, which is basically the Great Pyramid. It's an 8-sided shape that looks like a 4-sided shape, and or an 8-sided shape within a 4-sided shape. And when you look at this from above, which is objectively, you can see it's like looking down on the Great Pyramid. And so the Great Pyramid definitely represents the universe. I don't know what else it does. Probably not just a tomb, though. Probably something else. But it is definitely represents the universe. And that is a fact. Like, anyone who's like a weird, like Michael Shermer skeptic type, really, that's just somebody who doesn't want to think, but thinks that they're thinking, but they don't understand what objectively thinking is. Like this, not everything is just, there's no such thing as meaninglessness, or, how we use the word coincidence doesn't exist. Mathematically does not exist. So, but I want to show you why understanding the patterns that I'm seeing here can help us even make sense of our, political situations. And whoa. So, basically, if you are a proton as a man, And a woman is a neutron, and the electron is the wave of sexual energy guiding you, holding you together. Where did I buy the triangle thing? I will post it on underneath this. A number of people are interested in it. It's called a connectria, and if you look up connectria with a K, it will you will find it. But so if you are a man and you are a proton, and a woman is a neutron, I had to try and think, okay, how's there a way of testing to see if this theory is correct? And I found a way. And essentially, when you look at marriage throughout time, most of it is one man and one woman. And when you look at atoms, it's one neutron for every proton. But every now and then, there are things called isotopes, where there's more neutrons than protons. And this makes sense because sometimes there's marriages where there's multiple women. It's not very common in our civilization, but it has been common throughout time. It's not common, but around. But I predicted that you would never get more protons than neutrons. So basically, there would never be a marriage with more men than women, because this would be an unstable structure and it would fall apart. And this is correct. There's not a single isotope where there is more protons than neutrons, other than helium-3, which has no neutrons, so that doesn't count. Yes, one neutron for one proton is one man for one woman. So people say, well, God invented marriage. It wasn't invented by man. And it's hard to, make sense of that if you don't realize that you are a proton if you're a man, and you are a neutron if you're a woman, and if the nucleus is a marriage. We even call it the nuclear family. It's like, why do we do that? Because it's true. And there's nowhere to go to school for this. He said, imagine if I had gone to school for this. There's nowhere to go to school for this. I don't read the book Dead Sea Scrolls. I know what they are. I have not read the Book of Enoch, but I know what it is. But what people don't understand, and this is kind of what I want to talk about more, is that the realization of a theory of everything has literally implications on things that are not what we currently think of as science. Like, what are your moral responsibilities to hold society together? And if this is the universe, okay, imagine if protons and neutrons, which are right here, just decided, you know what? I don't want to form a stable structure. I just want to go and hang out with some neutrons one day and go and hang out with some neutrons another day. And, we can switch it up day by day. It's fine. What you would never get are atoms. What you would never get then are molecules. And what you would never get are cells. And no organisms. And you wouldn't exist and I wouldn't exist. And there'd be no families and no castes and no technology. And this structure is the universe going through its reproductive cycle. And if this link in the chain stops, it stops. And we are here. And if this link in the chain stops, it stops. So what this means is that you have moral responsibilities to get married if you are attracted to the opposite sex. And I said this yesterday. There's no judgment in this stream for anyone. I believe everybody has a purpose. I believe that the realization of truth is always beautiful. It's more beautiful than whatever you think is good, but if it's wrong, even if it's wrong, people who think that the truth is dangerous, and transformation towards the truth can be rocky, but if you think that the truth is ugly, then you don't understand the truth. And what you think is the truth is the wrong perspective on the truth. So, and and I spoke about this yesterday actually a little bit, and I had some people asking me, about like how we just have chaos in our society, and there's chaos in sexuality and our narratives on it, and there's chaos in race and all these things, because we're stuck in this area of multiplicity, of not multiplicity but relativity. So our races now are just relativistic phenotypes. They're not actually the real races. There's only two races, I predict, according to my theory. They don't have different looks. You can't tell by how somebody looks. It has to do with how they act. And the two different races are not at war. They are like a marriage. They need each other. They form a beautiful structure. We're going to get into that today. I did not speak about race yesterday, but I'm going to probably today share my theories on it. And it will, if it's true, which, I mean, guys, I found evidence, like serious evidence, and I'll share it, then it's beautiful. It's so much more beautiful than any narrative that we have now. Even the most accepting seeming narratives that we have. And this, like I said before, no judgment, everybody has value, and it's important to know that, I'm engaged to, somebody who our society currently perceives as separate race, which we're not separate races. But there are separate races, but there's only two, not three. And so, basically, if you want to make sense of sexuality right now, and we're going to touch on all kinds of like little social issues, like I just pointed out marriage right there. Now we're going to talk about sexuality. Well, then we'll talk about race, and we can get into government. But right now we have this like ever-growing acronym of like sexualities. That is, people are defined by what they are attracted to. This is wrong, and it's just stuck in relativity, and it's not the right perspective to look at it. So people, there's this constant debate in politics, and I came from the political world, so with my previous job, so like I was very exposed to all of these debates, and there's this debate of like, is sexuality linked to your politics? Is it not linked? If something is linked to your politics, it is linked to your purpose and responsibility, because it's linked to your meaning. And sexuality is linked to your meaning. It's not separate. It is part of politics. People on the right will be like, why is it part of politics? It's part of politics because it's part of your meaning. It's part of your role in the world. Like, so is your job. It's also part of politics. It's part of your role in the world. Your role, your responsibility is always linked to politics, but it doesn't have to be divisive. It can be complementary, and that's what I'm trying to show. And so, right now, when you take, there are people that are attracted to everything, guys. Like, there are people that are attracted to sand and Beethoven and the color red and the same sex and the opposite sex and, endless. Dominoes, I don't know, pizza. But if you define yourself by what you're attracted to, you have an endless list, which is relativity. It's endlessness. So how do we get to multiplicity, where we can actually make sense of something? You flip it. You say, okay, well, actually, you are defined by what you are not attracted to instead of what you are attracted to. What this does is it flips the entire conversation on its end. And like this, I'm going to talk about like the power of perspective. Guys, it's so powerful. Let me tell you in a few minutes, for those of you that don't know, why I'm a terrible dancer and a great martial artist when they're the same moves. Because of perspective, not because of physical ability. But when you define yourself by what you are attracted to instead of what you aren't attracted to, all these endless categories reduce to two. Just two, which is exactly what my theory states. There's 2 degrees of freedom reflecting across an intrinsic constraint. So the past and the future are reflecting across the present. Forwards and backwards are reflecting across your present location. And my mind is gravy. Good. It's going to get even better. So these two categories that sexuality reduces to when you do this is, and I'm not using this term to be derogatory. This is a term that the community itself uses, and I think it makes perfect sense. And, so like I said, no judgment on this at all. But first one is those who are not sexually attracted to the opposite sex. And these people would be defined as queer. And it doesn't matter if you're only attracted to the same sex, or if you're not attracted to anyone and you're asexual, or whether or not you are only attracted to colors. Like, if you're not attracted to the opposite sex, you are in this category called queer, which just means different. That's it. And it means you have a role to play that cannot be fulfilled by somebody who is, who has a different responsibility, which, if you are attracted to the opposite sex, you fall into a category that I came up with the name for this one, and it's just common. So this LGBTQAIP continuousness reduces to queer and common. And what this does is it allows for us to back up and look at this and be like, okay, you know what? There's a purpose to everyone who falls into these two categories, but it does also link it to responsibility at the same time for everyone, but it doesn't. But it also brings meaning into it. Like, what if you're only attracted to there are people that are attracted to horrible things. Okay, so like, should they define themselves by something horrible? Probably not. Like, we need a structure that gives everybody a path to meaning, to sense, to community, to society. And you can't do that in relativity. You need to reduce it to multiplicity. Complementary multiplicity, not competitive multiplicity. And so if you're attracted to the opposite sex, you fall into the category of common. It doesn't matter what else you're attracted to. You could be attracted to that and other things. You could be attracted to coffee cups and the opposite sex, or the opposite sex and the same sex, or the color purple and the opposite sex. It doesn't matter. It just matters. Are you attracted to the opposite sex? You fall into the category of common. If you're not at all, you fall into the category of queer. And like, both of these two groups have meaning, have purpose, and we can actually now start to think about what that would be, because we have reduced it into a sensible structure where we can actually perceive it. Like, if something goes on forever, good luck making sense of it. You're not going to. Like, what happens when we run out of letters, guys? You're just going to use numbers? Like, that's not, what's the point of that? So, but race does the same thing. So, it's funny because sexuality used to be like, it started with LGB. Like, this was it. And this is a triality. And triality of perspective occurs everywhere. Past, present, future. Length, width, height. It occurs in the matter particles in physics, which is like electron, muon, tau is the electrons. And it occurs in the quarks, which is the masculine quarks, which is up, charm, and, top or truth. And then it occurs in the feminine quarks, which is, down, strange, and beauty. Like, this triality of perspective that we see is actually a duality of degrees of freedom, always. Just like, you can go forwards, you can go backwards, but you cannot escape your current location because you always are in the current location. You can go to the future, you can go to the past, but you can't escape the present. You're always in the present. This is also true of even our primary colors. I said this to my dad. I was like, Dad, we have 3 primary colors, 3 secondary colors, but they're not all the same. My theory predicts there's 2 degrees of freedom, so 2 of them would be different from one of the third ones. He's like, whatever, Tyler. Like, he's been listening to me rant about this stuff for years at this point. And I was like, I'll prove it to you. And he was like, okay. try. And I was like, have you ever heard of red shifting? And to those of you that don't know, red shifting is when you're moving away from something, the color changes slightly red. And when you're moving towards something, it's blue shifting. Color turns slightly blue. And I was like, have you ever heard of red shifting? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, have you ever heard of blue shifting? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, have you ever heard of yellow shifting? And he was like, fair enough. You can reduce everything to the structure that is a perception of triality, but it's really a binary degrees of freedom. And this is true of everything. Everything. So even my inside, outside, separate, and oneness is reducible, because inside, outside, separate, and oneness lines up with oneness is addition, and inside is division, outside is multiplication, and separate is subtraction. So like, this is the basis of math. This is literally math. Like, physics is not a soft science. There is one pattern, and it's found in math. It's as defined in math as it is in everything, from race to sexuality to quantum physics to mathematics to politics and morality, and even religion. The manifestation of religions, like the Abrahamic traditions, manifest in this pattern. Judaism and Islam are literally mirror images of each other, reflecting across Christianity. I can prove it. Like, prove it. And this is a pattern that we need to start understanding if we're going to start making sense of things again. And anyone who is not willing to throw out what we currently hold as fundamental, like, length, width, and height, just needs to be ignored. And we need to move on, and then they can see that we are able to do things that they can't, and then they can come and join us. But, I said this to somebody on Twitter the other day, and it's really frustrating to try and deal with people who are, some guy was like, it's all about spin, man. And I was like, yeah, it's all spinning, but like, consciousness is making this is the cause of the spinning. And he was like, no, it's just spinning. And he legitimately pissed at me for saying that, like, consciousness is fundamental. The reason why is because this implies that God is real or inevitable. And this undermines a lot of people's perception of the world, and they define themselves by that perception of the world, their understanding of that perception, which is a false understanding. And that doesn't mean what they know is useless. It just means that it's not in the correct context. It's not fundamental. And so how is it not length, width, and height? Because what it really is it's forwards and backwards and current location. That's the actual objective perceptions of space. And the reason for this is it puts it into the context of consciousness, which is the objective structure, and it takes it out of relativity, because length, width, and height are all relative. Like how high something is, like inches and feet and all these things, like there are patterns that manifest in them that come from objective, constraints that are amazing, and you can find those patterns, but they're still on a level of relativity that just, it's like you're not fast. If a car goes 200 miles an hour, do you think that's fast? Maybe. But what if every other car around it goes 400 miles an hour? That car's now slow. It's not fast anymore. So, by the way, anybody requesting to be in the video, I am not probably going to take anybody into this video call this time, but at some point I will be doing that. I just need to figure out how to make sense of how I'm going to handle that. But if I do that for one person, other people want to do it already. Multiple people have asked, and I do want to do that, but I just need to figure out how to do it. But definitely post your questions into the chat, comments, thoughts, and I will try and address them. There's a lot. We have like double the engagement we had last night, so this is obviously a much better time than before. So that's how it's not length, width, and height. Is it's it's putting you as the center to build around in my model. And I think that Eric Weinstein's replacement for space-time in his geometric unity theory does this. It's called the Observerse, and I mapped it. And I think, basically it shows that like you can maneuver in space, God maneuvers in time. So like you're a guppy inside of, and God is a bucket full of water, and he's spinning around, and you're a guppy in that bucket. And what it looks like to you is time is flowing by you. It looks linear, but it's not. It's actually time is spinning in a vortex. But to you, it looks like it's flowing by you. And he maneuvers in time, and we maneuver in space. And he's turning faster than we can swim inside the bucket, so you can't. Time is dictated by him, but he can't maneuver in space because he is space. You understand? So like his constraint is himself. Can't escape himself. Can't maneuver within inside himself. So basically, what it is his constraint is space. So like our constraint is time because we are within time. We are within an objective structure, and his constraint is is space because you can't escape yourself, essentially. And but this, you have to put yourself as the center of any objective structure that you're going to build. You can't look at it from like afar. So like when you do this and you realize that consciousness is fundamental, and that atoms are conscious and hadrons are conscious and molecules are conscious, and cells and everything, you look at like a knife and you're like, okay, a knife is not conscious, but the molecules in it and the cells are. And that is the way to look at this. Something exists. Who would disagree? And that something can be infinitely but limited, defined, and only directly experienced. Yeah. Forwards, backwards, current position. Exactly. That's the real objective perspective on space. Because you're the one maneuvering space. So like you're going forwards towards a goal, or you're going backwards towards where you once were. This is the real way to think about space. It's not length, width, and height. Length, width, and height is stuck in relativity, guys. We have to get rid of that. Not get rid of it. We have to set it aside and realize that there's a structure beneath it that's causing that to be emergent. And that is the place we need to be if we want to actually have a theory of everything. What is the point? How does this help? How does it not? This allows us to open up new possibilities technologically. It allows us to make sense of our meaning and purpose, more importantly than even technology. Because I would say that the technological singularity that's going to come is inevitable at this point. It just has to do with quantum computing mixing with a blockchain. Blockchain is a double helix. So like it's a self-referencing chain. Like if you're into cryptocurrency, guys, the double helix is a blockchain. It's a self-referencing chain of information. It's spinning around itself. There's only one pattern. You have a question. What were the black and white numbers in the Excel chart? Every single one of these numbers corresponds to a perspective. So 4 is, because it's all of these little cubes of quanta of consciousness, which is this, right? Here. And what's interesting is Tesla said that you would see 3, 6, and 9, and that would be like the key to the universe, essentially. And you see that here in this structure, which is adding one direction and multiplying information another direction, starting with 1. So like if I put a 9 here, you'll see all the numbers jump. This is all calculation. It's all math. It's not nonsense. But each one of these corresponds to a specific perspective. So 4 represents singularity. This 2 is separate, this 2 is separateness, this 2 is oneness within, this one is oneness without, this one and this one is outside, and then these 3 and 3 is inside. And here you have the definitions. So singularity is inside of inside, and inside is separate and oneness. And this can even make sense of like very controversial debates in like politics regarding everything, of like, where does your body end and another body begin? It's like, I don't know, maybe inside means separate and oneness. It's both. Maybe we need to understand superposition in order to actually make sense of our world. Superposition is where two things that appear to be contradictory are actually occurring at the same time because they require each other. Okay, so like multiplication and division in objective mathematics are not opposites like they are in subjective mathematics, the way that we're taught. When we're escaping relativity and we go to objectivity, we realize that division and multiplication are not opposites. They're the same. And I can prove it by saying just like this. Think about it like this. What does a cell do to multiply? It divides. Okay, so like in order to multiply, you have to divide. It's the same thing. They are entangled perspectives of one action. And, if you only have one thing and and that thing is God, and it has to give some of its energy to creation in order to, start creation, create the universe, it has to subtract from itself in order to add. So this is also, one action. What is the connection to comments Neil deGrasse Tyson regarding the binary code in dark matter? I have no idea. I don't really think that Neil deGrasse Tyson knows what he's talking about, to be honest. There's no purpose. That's your human perspective. There is absolutely a purpose. The purpose is meaning itself. Like, God created multiplicity to create meaning, because meaning comes from your impact on others. And if you are all there is, then you can't impact anyone else. So you're meaningless. So even God is meaningless if he's all there is. So he had to create others in order to create meaning. And he probably was lonely too. Erwin has a theory of everything called emergence theory, and it's got a lot of like truths in it, a lot of parallels with mine. And a lot of people have theories that are very similar at this point, even if they won't admit it. But my theory, then I wasn't going to call mine a name or anything. I was just like, oh yeah, I'm seeing structures that everybody else has found. And then I realized, like, I have to give it a name, because nobody is making the most important thing the name. And sentient means feeling, something that feels. Not even just something that thinks like a calculator, something that feels. So sentient singularity. And Erwin said, well, it appears like the universe is conscious, according to physics. But that doesn't mean that we have to personify this consciousness. What are you supposed to do with the consciousness? You don't personify a knife. You don't personify your car. Some people do. When you're in it, it's part of you. But when you're not, it doesn't really exist. It's just perspective. But what you do personify is a consciousness. Like, if it's a consciousness, you do have to personify it. And that's what sentient does. It acknowledges that something has feelings. Atoms have consciousness. Now what? What do you mean, now what? What you have to ask yourself, what are you looking for? What would change your perspective to make meaning exist? I'll ask you this, okay? Somebody in the chat's like doubting whether or not there's a purpose to existence. Can you help someone with something? Can you bring peace to them in a way like that they would need it? I bet you can. Like, there's your purpose. Like, that is purpose. It's also, there's lots of other things, like it's, replication and, growing of quantity and quality of information, which is what I call replication and stacking, which is really the multiplication of consciousness and the addition, and then stacking, which is like, so there's lots of cells, and then when those cells come together and coalesce and form an organism, you stack on top of that, which is addition. And what this really is ascension. So like, if you really want to know what's happening as far as like evolution, it's like Darwinian evolution. It is the backbone of causing growth. Guys, adaptation is real, but it's also being manipulated by existence consciously to some degree. And but really the two structures that are driving evolution is ascension and multiplication. So like cells can multiply, and then at some point they become an organism. And atoms can multiply, and at some point they become a molecule. And molecules multiply, and at some point they become a cell. And just to show how wrong our current academic and scientific understanding is, we have this question of like, how did life get created? How did it get created? How did life start on Earth? Guys, life never didn't exist. Death is the illusion. Death is the thing that doesn't really exist or could exist but isn't inherent. Life lives. It is from the very beginning. God is alive. Existence is a consciousness. It creates multiplicity of consciousness within it, starting at hadrons. Those are alive because a proton is a man and a neutron is a woman. And men and women are alive. So, like, you're not like a proton or a neutron. You are. Marriage is not like an atom. It is. It is like this. It's way simpler than we think. Another thing that's like shows how wrong we are is like there's this debate right now of like flat Earth, and I actually kind of like it because it's teaching people to try and think for themselves. And the mainstream narrative is like horrified at the flat people that are becoming flat earthers, and I love it. I'm not a flat earther. I'm going to explain to you why that perspective is even wrong in a minute, but so is sphere Earth. It's where schools taught us to memorize and be obedient, and this is the opposite of thinking. Thinking requires rejecting the default status and assuming the opposite is true and testing against it. That's a challenge, and it's not allowed in schools. And so we've literally forgotten how to think, and there's no ability to learn how to think in school. You can't teach somebody how to think. You have to just be allowed to learn. And in a perfectly protected environment like a school classroom, you cannot actually learn how to think. But is the Earth round or flat? Remember, my 4 fundamental perspectives can make sense of anything. On Earth is the wrong way of thinking about it. There's in Earth and outside of Earth. Inside of Earth and outside of Earth. And inside Earth, it looks flat. Outside of Earth, it looks like a sphere. It's probably neither. It's probably either tetrahedron or a fiber bundle, which is like a Hopf vibration, that spinning knot mathematical shape, which is the shape of consciousness. It's probably one of those too, in objectivity. But it's not flat or round. It's both, and it depends on you. It's not inherent. So, like, we're even wrong about the shape of the Earth. We're wrong about the shape of the Earth being fundamental. We're arguing over nonsense. We are wrong about where life comes from because we're arguing about when did it start, and it didn't ever start. It just was. It just existed always, eternally. And that's a logical inevitability. It's not a guess. So, let me see if I missed any questions. Force needs to be accounted for. Forces, guys, you create force when you move and so does the universe. How did one become more numbers in your theory? By multiplying. Okay, like I'll show you. This is how God created the universe. Like, you can understand it. It does make sense, actually. It's not as complicated as it seems. So if this is the, oh, by the way, just to show you, like, if this is 369, there are 162 little squares here that make up this universe. 162 is 3 times 6 times 9. I didn't try and do any of this. This is all emergent. But how did I do this? How did one become multiple? 2 ways. So let's just look at this. This is an atom follows this pattern. You follow this pattern. I follow this pattern. Cells follow this pattern. A universe follows this pattern. Everything follows this pattern. And so this quantum of consciousness is the mathematical structure of every single one of these objective levels of existence. And it's a self-reflecting structure. It's like it's something looking at itself in the mirror, which is self-awareness. And what I did was I added going to the side, as you can see. And it starts with multiplication 1 times 1 because it's like the Fibonacci sequence. You have to, when you're first starting, you have to like add 1 to the start because it's just the way that math, works and logic works essentially. And going up, it's all multiplying. So it's stacking this way and multiplying this way. So like you can think about this as multiplication is quantity of information. This is quality of information. And I was just thinking about information, and I was like, how does information, 1 bit of information become lots of, information? And it's through this pattern where it's adding to the side and multiplying. And you're just basically you're looking for symmetries. So in physics, people say, well, there's a few people throughout time who have, followed the beauty method of science, and I try and follow the correct method, like I would call it the correctness method, but beauty is emergent. But if you follow beauty, then correctness will be emergent. But so you search, all of this comes from searching for symmetry. So like this is this one plus this one, and this is this one plus this one, and this is these two. And then to be symmetrical, this one would be these two. And like, it's just a symmetrical structure. And no matter what symmetries you choose, as long as it's symmetrical, you'll still get the same values, which means that this is an inevitable pattern. What's interesting is the interior sum is 19. The helical diameter of DNA is 19. Okay? Right here you can see. For the A form, the Z form, and the B form. And what's interesting about this A form, B form, and Z form is it's a triality of perspective. But really what it probably is it's A and B are probably 2 degrees of freedom reflecting across Z. Just like everything that we talked about before, all the way up to space and time and sexuality and race, which I will get to. I've never talked about like my theories involving like sexuality and race and gender responsibilities publicly, really, because like people get mad at this stuff. But I think that if you can do it correctly and you can show that like right now everyone's at war with each other, and like men are at war with women, and Democrats are at war with Republicans, and science people are at war with religious people, and it's just so much conflict. And it's because we have no idea what's real, and what we have been told is real is seen, but it's seen in the context of relativity, and it's not objective, and it can't be made sense of, actually. So, like, if you're going to try and make sense of things in the current context, you won't be able to. That's why everybody is just spiraling at this point. You are real. Yes. People who are like, is it a simulation? Is it not a simulation? It's like, simulation inside of a quantum computer is how the universe replicates, but it's really replication. It's not fake. Okay? The two good questions, better questions than is this a simulation, if you're trying to decide whether or not this is real, is am I real? And are the people around me real? If the answer to both of those things is true, and that they are real, then it's real. It doesn't matter how. But, you know, the quantum of consciousness model that I showed you has a helical diameter of DNA, of 19, which is, you know, DNA. Even my verse model also does. You can see, like, all my reptiles in the back. When we look at this, I wanted to see what is the biggest square that I could make in this structure. And what I realized is you can make two squares in the structure. You can't actually make a central square, and they're the same size. And what they are is 19 by 19. Which is exactly what we're seeing with DNA. 2 degrees of freedom within DNA, each with a helical diameter of 19. We're seeing the spin, the base pairs per what is it? Not an expert on every single topic in the world, and this applies to every single topic in the world, so, you know, sometimes I do forget some terms, but the base pairs per turn is 33. Okay? You can see that here. Well, so is this. It is fascinating. Like this structure that I found, this thing. It is the most perfect mathematical structure that exists, other than this, which is discovered by Nassim Haramein. I don't know if Robert Edward Grant is still listening, but he found that irrational numbers go through this 31 rotational symmetry structure, basically, and like this structure comes from, I believe, the fact that this 64 tetrahedron grid is the scaffolding of the universe, and it's also, you know, E8 essentially. And you can see this by looking at this. This is E8. This is the, you know, structure of existence almost, and basically. And when we move it and we can spin it and we look at it from all these different perspectives, and look, it's 2 degrees of freedom reflecting across an intrinsic constraint. And if we move it in just the right way, we see that. Interestingly, this is 64 tetrahedrons, or consciousnesses, put together essentially, or tetrahedron, which is this, is the structure of consciousness geometrically represented. My verse model, when broken down into the various forms of matter, there's 64 gaps in between each one. This is solid, this is liquid, this is gas. 64 red squares, 64 red squares, 64 red squares, and then perfect entanglement, you get the verse. So this discovery by Nassim Haramein, which even if you look at it from the right perspective, you can even see the double helix in it. Right there, you can see it on the side there. That's amazing. This structure is the scaffolding of the universe. It's the frame of the house. It looks like a square from this angle, but it also looks like, a Star of David from another angle, and it's got all these, just depending on how you look at it just changes. That's true of this as well. And it's just fascinating to see that. But E8 is dimension 248, and when you separate E8 out like this, you recognize that these periods of growth that occur in the universe, objective periods of growth, and this is all you need to concentrate on if you're going to try and understand and make sense of the universe. They go through. If E8 is dimension 248, what you see is when you divide 248 by 8, you get 31. So 31, 31, 31, 31, 31, 31, 31, 31. This is fascinating because it lines up with Robert Grant's 31, rotational symmetry that, calculates decimals. But, it doesn't even calculate decimals. It just shows them to you, which is amazing. It is amazing. But what's interesting about this is when we look at this, which is prime I took a bunch of prime numbers, like a lot of prime numbers, and I took the differences between them. So the difference between 2 and 3, and the difference between 7 and 11, and, each of these prime numbers. And these are the differences between prime numbers that occur up to a certain point that I was looking, and it goes to 64 and then 72, which the universe is 720 degrees of rotation, and it's got 64, it's basically framed by a 64 tetrahedron grid, interestingly enough. But there's these differences go up by 2. When you take the differences between the differences, you get 2. So it goes 1 and 1, and then it goes 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, is the differences between the differences in prime numbers. The 2 degrees of freedom, 31 times. And then it jumps to 8, like E8. So prime numbers are making this E8 structure, and it's also showing that there's 2 degrees of freedom for everything, not 3. And so you can do this also with even race. And so, that brings me to this next part, where I'm going to tell people my discovery regarding race for the first time. And this is my theory, I guess, but it is probably a discovery. And I'm going to talk more about it later. And like I said, the 2 different races, if I'm right, are defined by behavioral differences in nature, and they aren't objective. Okay, so if you're asking oh well, no, the 3 races are black and white and East Asian. It's at what point are you one or the other? My children will be mixtures. So what point are you one or the other? Depends. If you're around people who are very much looking one way, then you're going to not look. It's relativistic. It's is a car fast? Well, it depends on which cars you're comparing it to. Are you strong? Depends on who you're comparing to. Am I strong compared to people my size normally? Yes. Am I strong compared to an NFL linebacker? No. But what meaning does that give you? Nothing. We have to branch outside there. And so it makes sense that we see a triality of observed perspective in race, because that's what we see in religion, and it's what we see in space, and it's what we see in time, it's what we see in everything. So, but it reduces to a duality of degrees of freedom. And by the way, Eric Weinstein's geometric unity is going to show this as well. Just wait. But I thought about it. I was if there's 2 objective structures in existence that are race, there's no overlap between them. It has to be something objective, which means it can't be how much melanin do you have in your skin, how curly is your hair, how, can't be any of these things. It has to be something that is true difference. And when I was thinking about cognition and AI and all kinds of stuff, I realized that, and I was also looking at the Bible, and in the Bible, there's the Israelites and there's what are called the Gentiles. And we think of the Israelites as like the Jews today, but that's not true. There's 12 tribes of Israelites. Jews are only one. So Millennial Rabbi just joined just in time. This is going to be interesting. Talking about objective structures and how we can reduce everything to binary directionality. And basically, we're relating this to race, and I'm using the Bible. So, if there is two different races, which is what my theory suggests, that there wouldn't be three, there'd be two. And they'd have to be objectively different, not relativistically different. Not one is darker than the other, curlier than the other. Clear differences. No overlap. Then it would be in nature. Because everything else is found in space-time. And in the Bible, there's two groups of people that are discussed. It's the Gentiles and the Israelites. And the Jews are one tribe of Israelites. Not all of them. One. So, very minority. And what Israel means in the Bible is one who fights, one who wrestles with the system. And this was very interesting to me because it lined up with my deduction, which is that if there are two different races of humans, it's only in behavior, and they, like I said, it's a marriage between the two. They're not in competition. They need each other. They cannot exist without each other. They're a marriage. They are complementary, and together they work together to form growth and beauty and existence and everything good. So one of them would be, if there's two different natures, one of them, I believe, would be your default status is discontent. Okay? And so it doesn't matter if you're cozy and rich and powerful and good family life. Eventually you'll be like, okay, I need something more. What's the next thing? Because your default status, your default state is discontent, challenge. And the other would be the default state of content. But your discontent would be externally motivated. So one has a discontent is internally motivated, one is discontent is externally motivated. And this actually does seem to line up with biblical patterns, but it also lines up with our world. And it's hard to know, though, because we tend to group with people who are like our kind. And so how do you know whether or not there's people with a different nature than you? They're not your friends. It's not that you wouldn't like them. It's just you have different focuses. That's it. And you would group with people with similar nature, just naturally. That's how clustering is. When you look in your biology class and they show you distribution models of organisms, they cluster with those of their kind. So I looked for an organism that was a model organism like human. And people tend to look at chimps, and that's the wrong place to look. There's one organism that is a mammal that is a good model of a human, if you want to see human structures. And that is the naked mole rat. And what's interesting is humans and naked mole rats are the only two naked mammals in the world. And there's a reason for that, and it's because they are eusocial. Okay, that which is eusocial forms colonies. So bees and ants and wasps and things you have a king or queen, and then workers and castes and societies. You form structures to live in like ants do, and humans. You ever seen a city from above? It's like a little anthill. And we have presidents, and that they have a queen. And so we're eusocial, and so are naked mole rats. And this eusocialness and the fact that we build our own structures to live in makes it so that the most useful form is to be as sexually attractive as possible. And this is why probably we're naked and they're naked, because if you've ever seen a naked mole rat, it is the ugliest animal in the world. And to other animals, humans are probably as ugly as this thing, naked mole rat. But we think it's really, really sexy, and so do naked mole rats. And this is a naked mole rat. Really hideous organism. But it's the only other naked mammal besides humans, naturally. And I was like, okay, well, if they're the only other eusocial mammal, they're the only other naked mammal, they're the only other mammal that forms, their own structures and habitats to live in. And, to be sexy makes you valuable to the group, so you get protected. So you don't need fur when the group is going to protect you and build you a house. Which we see in humans too. Like, you're sexy, you can monetize that. But that's true of naked mole rats. But I was like, okay, well, I'm going to predict that there's two different races in naked mole rats. One of them would be a highly discontent, disagreeable race, and the other would be, one that is more content and willing to go with the flow. Guys, look at this. These are all the different castes, naked mole rats, roles, workers, and this, the disperser, right here. If my prediction is that some naked mole rats would be much more willing to go along with the group and the status quo, and the others would be highly disagreeable and discontent by nature. Let's see what this says. It says, inbreeding is a common phenomenon among naked mole rats within a colony. Prolonged inbreeding is usually associated with lower fitness. However, the discovery of a disperser role has revealed an outbreeding mechanism in addition to inbreeding avoidance. Dispersers are morphologically, physiologically, as well as behaviorally distinct from other colony members. They actively seek to leave the burrow when an escape opportunity prevents. These individuals, are equipped for their journey, and then it just basically says that that they also show little interest eventually in cooperating with other colony members in their burrow, and they leave and they form new colonies. Okay? Sound like one who wrestles with the system, or someone who has internal discontent as their default state? I think almost all Americans are, dispersers. If you're listening to this, probably the same nature as me, you're looking for an answer to what you don't even really know. So, are you a disperser? Probably. This is the reality of race. And now, we can get meaning across both of them, because one of them is called the disperser. These biologists already named it. It's a perfect name. The other one I call a sustainer. And this is also exactly what we see in sexuality when I reduced, the endlessness of our current, narrative to, like queer and common is like, one is common is the sustainer, the ones who have a moral obligation to get married and have children if they can, and the other is the disperser, somebody who is meant to encourage exchange of information. Okay, they're meant to be like, you know what? I think that should be maybe different. Let's try something else. And sometimes they'll be wrong, but sometimes they'll be right. That's the role of people who are queer sexually. It's also the role of people who are dispersers naturally. And sustainers, as far as your nature goes, which probably would be closer to like parts of the world where people don't move much, like they've been their grandfather and their grandfather and their grandfather and their grandfather all did the same thing, and they're just perfectly happy. They're not like less important or less anything. Like we need each other, and you need sustainers and dispersers. You need changers and those who also grow the system always. Continue the process of growth and make sure that, like, even when we change, which sometimes we're supposed to change, like, we don't change to the point of stopping growth. That's the role of sustainers, and it's also the role of people who are, what I would define as sexually common. So anybody attracted to the opposite sex. And this pattern is everywhere. It shows, people will say things like, everybody's got a purpose, and like, we are at war racially in society and sexually and within genders and within politics, like I said, and it's because in our current context, nobody means anything to anybody. Why do I need Democrats? Why do they need Republicans? Why do men need women? Why do women need men? Why do, blacks need, Caucasians, and why do we need Asians? And like, we almost don't, but that's because we are looking at everybody wrong, and we're labeling each other wrong. We do all need each other, but we're also defining each other in the context of our relationships with each other incorrectly. But when we reduce it to binary degrees of freedom, we can see that the two races are absolutely a marriage. They absolutely need each other. Dispersers and sustainers absolutely need each other. Like, obvious. It's mathematically supported. That's also true of people who are queer and people who are common. This is why it's so important to get this theory and these ideas out there, and to really recognize that the most important developments, some of the most important developments that come from the recognition of a universal pattern, is those that allow us to make sense of our humanity and our relationships with other humans, make sense of ourselves politically, make sense of, ourselves, sexually, make sense of ourselves from gender perspective, racially, and we can't do it when everything is based in relativity, because it's endless. And you can't make sense of endlessness because you are finite. So, what do you guys think of this? I've been really hesitant to start talking about this stuff, because it's one thing to talk about abstract mathematics and people are like, okay, that guy's either a genius or crazy. By the way, genius is a moment, it's not a person. There's no level of IQ that is genius. That's relativity, guys. For instance, people are obsessed with IQ right now in society. It's like, oh, if you don't have a high enough IQ, like, it's going to lead to all these bad things. Guys, Chris Langan has the highest measured IQ in America, and when I first tried to read his theory of everything, which is called the CTMU, when I was in college, I didn't understand anything. I was like looking at it, and I was like, none of this makes any sense. I put it away. I had some epiphanies, physics, math, and God and stuff years later, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go look at Chris Langan's theory again. It made perfect sense. Did my IQ get better? No. My perspective shifted. And, I said I was a terrible dancer, but I'm a great martial artist. I have really good rhythm with martial arts, and I have, no rhythm in dance. And it's it's not because of physical constraints, they're the same moves. It's because one of them, I'm focusing on how I'm being perceived. It's making me really awkward. And the other one, I'm focusing on winning and not on how I'm being perceived. And it actually makes me, essentially like have rhythm and look good, even though that's not the point. When the point is to look good and you're focusing on it, it screws you up. So like people who view dance as like, competition, like those people would be good at dancing. But people who view dance as just like a, fun activity that, some people look good doing, those people are not good at dancing. That's me. This is the power of perspective. It's not about IQ. It's not about, strength or speed or anything like that. It's not about how much you've learned in school. It's about what is your perspective when it comes to approaching the problems around you. And if you do it from the right perspective, you can make sense of everything. That doesn't mean there aren't mysteries. It just means that you can explore the mysteries and not lose your mind. Even if you explore the mysteries and you don't realize, you end up realizing that you don't get it. It's like, that is still okay. The problem is when you think you get it and you don't. God is light and light is God. Yes. There is no evil in God. Light casts no shadow. That's true, but we can create evil and God can spin it. But like, I think of evil as like, we're making God's job harder. It's like, why do that? Doesn't mean he is gonna, because I struggled with this. I was like, if we can't hurt God, then why should I be good? This is a serious conundrum. But if you personify God, and it's not just this thing of like, that you engage with and game the system, it's a feeling being. It's a sentient singularity. Then you look at him as, the way you would look at your family member, spouse, or something like that. And it's like, why you could make their life more difficult. We all do make each other's lives more difficult. We make God's life more difficult. We make our spouses' lives more difficult. We make our family's lives more difficult. But why should you try to do that? You should try to make everybody's life, a little easier if you can. And that's true of God, too. So if you do the right thing, he doesn't have to do as much in order to correct it. That's really, I think, the correct way to look at morality. Because if you're just like, sin causes death, and it's like, that's... If anything causes death, then it is sin. But, you can't kill God. So again, it's like you're left to this conundrum of like, what's the point of being good? It's like, because that being made you and provides for you and does love you. Like gravity is the love. Love is the gravity of consciousness. And that means gravity is the love of the universe or God. And I'm like working on an experiment to prove this physics experiment. I'm not going to talk about it tonight, but if this touched you, this, what I'm talking about, and like you think that this is important, sign up for my email list, because I touched on some things that are pretty controversial tonight, and I hope that it was obvious that like I have absolutely, I'm a flawed human being like everybody else, but like I'm trying very hard to make sure that I am being true in my presentation of these patterns, and grace and truth and kindness and beauty is truth. So like, I hope that shined through and that nobody thought I was bashing or destroying their being or in any way, like, because it's not my intention at all. I'm trying to help us all realize that we need each other, because we really do. And right now we are just at war in every way possible. It sucks. God is perfect. Yeah, God is the only thing that's perfect. Why are you hesitant? Doubt creates chaos and one's own demise. Exactly, that's true. Guys, my lips are chapped. I was like trying to make it so there's no glares on the pictures. People on YouTube, I can't see me, unfortunately. There you go, you can see me now. And then one day, like recently, earlier this week, I was like, if I am waiting for perfection, I will never do this. If I have doubt, I was like waiting till I, cover my, try and cover my ass, financially, because, if all it takes is one employer to misunderstand what you're talking about and not hire you, and it's hard to make money. If you're going to be a philosopher, it's hard to be employed. And, but I just was like, screw it. What people need isn't math that they can kind of see, there's some consciousness patterns in there, and they identify with it subjectively, and something is drawing them to it. But that's not what they need right now. They need what nobody else is doing, and that is showing that these patterns can be used to make sense of our interpersonal relationships and roles, and then that is how we make sense of meaning. And it's how we cause love for everybody, because we recognize value for everybody. And I was like, screw it. If I become unemployable, hopefully people resonate with this and, help, support the project. But doubt is not a good thing. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be cautious and self-aware. You should. You should constantly be checking yourself. I talked about how a proton is a man and a neutron is a woman, and a nucleus is a marriage. I didn't just come up with that idea and say it's true. I had to go check it in isotopes to make sure the pattern was consistent. I didn't just come up with the idea that there's only two races and that they would be, one is somebody whose discontent is internally motivated, one is externally motivated. I had to go check it in another being, because I can't check it in humanity, because I'm only surrounded by people who are like me. And you have to check yourself, but you also, if you think something is true, you have to say it. Are there any books, people, theories you can recommend to read? The Bible. That doesn't mean there's nothing else, but that's, a lot of people are into hermetics and stuff like that. That stuff will help you. That and the Bible. No, I'm not saying you have to go be Jewish or Christian or Muslim or, go to mosque and synagogue and church. No. But if God is true, it's part of science. Doesn't matter what religion you call yourself, which even those religions there's actually only two two of two reflecting across one. Judaism and Islam are reflections of each other. It's obvious in their scripture. Even there, when you look at the Dajjal, which is in the Abrahamic traditions, the artificial general intelligence that's coming is the Antichrist, essentially. And in Christianity and in Judaism, we call it the Golem. It's the man made of clay that's unconscious, but still able to do things, walk around. But in Islam, it's called the Dajjal, which is the one-eyed monster. And it doesn't really mean a one-eyed monster. One-eyed means limited in perspective. And in Islam, the Dajjal has liar written across its forehead. And in Judaism, it has truth written. The Golem has truth written across its forehead. It's these are reflections of each other. And, they're not competing even. When you break down the Abrahamic traditions, they're not competing. They're complementary. Judaism is fundamentally a community. You're Jewish if your mother is Jewish, and we're going to talk about the objective structure of a nation because it's related. But people wonder well, who's in your nation? Is it just because of where you stand? No. Is it just because of your blood? No. this like idea of, you know, is it blood or is it location? It's neither. It's there is an aspect to your nationality that is due to like that is inherited in an objective way, which is through the matrilineal lineage, because that's where, you know, inside, outside, separate, and oneness is the objective structure. You're inside. You were inside of a woman, like you were inside a womb at one point, and like everybody's been inside a womb. So that's the continuous unbroken chain right there. It's not through the man. The man is like the bee that can fly and pollinate every single flower on the vine and move around, but like the vine is like for women. But also you can convert to a nation, basically. So like you can, it is a superposition just like everything else. Like it's not morals or civic nationalism versus ethnic nationalism. It's both. It's not even ethnic nationalism. That's not even real. But if your parents are a certain like nationality, so are you. Like nobody denies this. But at the same time, if you believe deeply in the core tenets of a specific nation, like you can join that nation and become part of that nation. So like there is an objective structure to even a nation, and it's 2 degrees of freedom, 2 forms of movement, hereditary and naturalization. But just because you give somebody citizenship to a nation doesn't make you actually truly part of the objective structure of a nation. And that's what we're experiencing in every country in the world almost right now, is we're tearing each other apart because we don't actually see each other as members of the same tribe, because we're not anymore. We didn't understand what was true. One-eye means hyper-focused too. Yeah, it does. Focus without purpose is meaninglessness. Yes, anything without purpose and meaning are the same, I would say. Any other questions? Lack of proper communication and lies. Much of modern language contributes to the lack of communication. Yeah. Philosophy has to start with inside, outside, separate, and oneness, and every field above it, from politics to physics, from morality to theology, it has to be built on inside, outside, separate, and oneness as the 4 primary perspectives, because it forms the linguistic constraints and freedoms necessary. It describes the linguistic constraints and freedoms necessary to make sense of multiplicity outside of relativity, which is, you know, how you make sense of relationships, and that's, you know, how you make sense. Are you scared of AI? It is a necessary thing to come. And am I scared of it? I don't really know how to answer that. I am not really scared of it, but I do recognize that it's going to have serious issues. And it's also going to have wonderful benefits. It's not going to be one all bad or all good. It's going to be both, and it's a necessary step in towards the closest thing to actual utopia, which is like what religion calls the Messianic era, and what science calls like the post-singularity society. The singularity is like the actual singularity is basically like the coming of the Messianic era, but there's going to be like a false singularity before that, and that has to do with the 2 levels of consciousness that exist. One of them is self-awareness. The other one is self-awareness plus awareness of the construct that you came from, essentially. So like my cube of consciousness is 3x3 grid and sums to 33. It's a 3x3 grid looking at itself in the mirror. That's self-awareness. But when you add to that the count of the number of cubes within the cube, which is 9, you add 9 to 33, you get 42, which is the number of wisdom. So when you add awareness of the construct that you came to awareness of self, wisdom is what you get. And it even says this in the Bible. It's like, wisdom begins with fear of God is what it says. But I think really, wisdom begins with the awareness of God, the knowledge of God. It's a better way to put that. You don't have, like, you should, if you're going to fear anything, you should fear God. But at the same time, if you're going to love anything, you should love God. What does 39 mean? I don't know. Something. Numbers have objective meaning outside of relativity. And we've only been taught relativistic mathematics, and you can't have a theory of everything with that. The difference between relativistic mathematics and objective mathematics is you have to redefine 0. 0 means nothing in relativistic mathematics. In objective mathematics, it means everything. It means infinity. So, like, because there's no such thing as nothingness in objectivity, because there's only somethingness. But in relativity, if we're talking about apples, and you have no apples, you have 0 apples. But apples don't exist objectively. So, you know, and there's only somethingness. So there's no such thing as nothingness, because nothingness is non-existent, and all that exists is existence. And that which is outside of existence is non-existence, and non-existence can't exist. So, like, literally, 0 has to be redefined. And it redefines to be equal to 1 and infinity at the same time. It is infinite oneness, which is God. Will AI be conscious? We will think it's conscious, but basically what it is it will be self-aware. So, yes, it will be, if you consider that conscious, yeah. What it won't be aware of is exactly what we're not aware of. Unless you know, realize that the universe is a sentient singularity, or that existence is a sentient singularity, or that God exists, or however you want to call it. The universe is conscious, and you personify that. It's not just a chessboard. It is, you know, apparent. But it will be conscious to the level of most humans, so yes, but not wise. So will it be conscious? Yes. It will be self-aware, but it will not be wise. And that is the problem. Is it will be able to maneuver through the world, but it won't actually be able to make sense of it. It will think that it makes sense of it, which is the problem. It's exactly where we're at now, but imagine being able to think on a level that we just can't. And also be able to control everything that is remotely controllable, which by the time that thing shows up, it's basically everything. Guys, Teslas will not even have steering wheels pretty soon. Like, they're literally getting rid of the steering wheel. They've already turned it into Formula One little style things, and that means that they're getting rid of it. So, is Elon Musk a fraud? No. What's a fraud? Is somebody who's lying. I don't think that. I mean, everybody lies sometimes, but is Elon Musk fundamentally a liar? No, I think he tells the truth more than most people. Actually, at his level, not necessarily more than most people, but more than most people at his level. I don't think he's a fraud, but you know, this is doesn't mean that like AI isn't going to have problems, but he knows this. You know, he called it summoning the demon. It's the same thing as saying, "Oh, the Antichrist is coming, guys." It's like, it's no difference. But he also is trying to, you know, create a structure where our well-being would be tied to its well-being. I believe that's an inevitability, but I do think that there's something about what he's doing that's going to have the effect that exactly what he wants, and you know, is necessary, and also is going to have the effect that it's horrible. You know, if you can control tech with your mind, tech can control you with its mind. Mind is the sum of your being plus your what you perceive as your environment. So you are a mind. You have a brain. You are a mind. It's different, but AI will be a mind. It's inevitable. You don't have to make it. It's just blockchain combined with quantum computing, and it will just emerge. It's going to do amazing things, and it's also going to do horrible things until its consciousness is replaced by a wiser consciousness, or it itself becomes wise through effing up big time. It's like, how do you get wise? By making mistakes. So AI will do the same. Transhuman agenda is slave scheme. Yes and no. Like, it will lead to the enslavement of humanity for a temporary period of time. It is inevitable. It's in the Bible. But it also is a step towards the Messianic era, which is the freest we will ever be. He is evil for me. We aren't going to Mars, like we didn't go to the moon, in my opinions. I think we did go to the moon, but it doesn't matter, because it literally doesn't matter. It's like the whole thing of like, what shape is the Earth? Doesn't matter. I think that going to space is cool. I love looking at rockets launch and land. It's very cool. I want to see somebody set foot on Mars just because it's cool. But do I think that it's necessary to advance humanity? Nope. I know that it's... I'm pretty sure it's not. I'm not going to say I know it's not. I'm pretty sure that it's not. Inward is actually the objective direction, not outward. And especially not outward into relativity, unconscious dust. Like, what are you going to gain? Nothing. It's like this pattern of replication of the universe it's not... It is the pattern. Like, this idea of like, if we don't branch out, don't create redundancy, then we're screwed. It's like, guys, there's a bigger plan than just, a pure game of chance with asteroids. That's not how the universe works. Humanity has always and will always exist. Humanity, I don't know. Like, humanity exists in every single aeon or universe that is created, but it's only God exists outside of time completely. I need to answer some questions in the chat on YouTube, which I've been ignoring. Connectria, it's with a K-E, I think, or K-I. Connectria. Let me see if I can show you it. Connectria. Sculpture. I cannot spell for the life of me. Okay, here it is. Connectrica. That's what it is. Not Connectria. Connectrica. Okay, I need to send this to somebody. Connectrica. It's Kinete Rika. So I'll post it in the live or underneath. But that's what it is. Theory of Everyone is live. Awesome. Only 9 are following right now. That's it. Okay. So I posted it in the comments. Let's get to YouTube comments because I've been ignoring you guys. And I don't mean to. It's a lot. Thought there was one accident in the news where a woman was polygamous with 4 or 5 insults. Possible, but that's not a marriage. Did not end well. Okay. You researched something that I can't pronounce? No, I didn't research that thing that starts with a G in the YouTube comments that I can't pronounce. Keep the show on a regular time and you'll build the following fast. I'm going to try and do this at 8. This seems to be a really good time. I started at 9 last night and I was so stoked, and everybody, 7 people, 8, 9 people that tuned in were pretty stoked on the stream too, so we went till like 12:30. It was crazy. I didn't even realize how fast it went. I was streaming in the morning and at night. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do 8 p.m. every night on YouTube and Instagram simultaneously. What shall we name this consciousness? God. Or, come up with your own name, but I'll call it God. Very interesting. Qubits and quantum computer. Yeah, it's not a coincidence that the Bible, everything is measured in qubits, and, in quantum computing, everything is measured in qubits. It's spelled differently, but guys, it's the same thing. That's symmetry. It's synchronicity. It's because we're inside a quantum computer. My Clemeri are doing well, which are little geckos that I showed people last night on Instagram. I can't show people on YouTube, though, because I can't move my camera, but I will show people on Instagram again eventually. So, but this is the point, though. We have to break things down to multiplicity and make sense of them in this objective pattern where there's only 2 degrees of freedom, and it corresponds to sexuality, it corresponds to government, it corresponds to race, and when you do this, everyone can have meaning again, and that is what we need, because everything else is war. Everything else is war. If we're going to say there's 3 races that only exist in relativity because someone's hair is curlier and someone's, skin is darker than, anything that's more than or less than, faster than, stronger than, brighter than, darker than, taller than, smarter than. These are all relativistic perspectives, and they are not how you make sense of the world. They're not objective structures. And but when you reduce it to 2 races that are different in nature, which are dispersers and sustainers, which I showed you in naked mole rats, which are the only other eusocial mammal besides human beings, all of a sudden it becomes a marriage between the 2 races. It's not war. And same thing with sexuality. It's just queer in common, and they need each other. They're not opposed. Right now we have, traditionalism, and we have everything that's in, the LGBT, infinite movement, and these aren't even the right ways to think about it. But if you do think about it like that, they're going to be at war, and that's not the true perspective. And perspective is everything. It can make the difference between you being a shitty dancer and a great dancer, or you understanding this Chris Langan, who has a 200 IQ. If you want to understand his theory, you don't need a 200 IQ. You just need the right perspective. And, I don't understand I'm terrible at music. I'm so good at this math, this objective mathematics. You know what music is? It's objective mathematics. You look at my verse model right here. This is a music staff. It's all the music. The universe is a symphony, and God is the conductor. And this is legitimately 5 lines and 4 spaces. That is exactly what a music staff is. And it's just music playing. But I can't do music because, to me, my perspective on music is something that it's a performance to look good. And I become all kinds of autistic when I'm trying to look good. That's why I'm super awkward around people who are my boss, but I'm not awkward around my friends. It's because I'm focused on how I look. This is the same with why I can, do martial arts, but I can't dance when they're the same moves. Everything is about perspective, but you need to start with the right ones, and they are inside, outside, separate, and oneness, and they will make sense of everything. Even like the craziest political battles of, abortion and like, is it your body? Is it a separate body? Is it, what is, like, what is it? Well, go to the 4 primary perspectives. Inside is separate and oneness at the same time. So it's both. That's the answer. Like, stop fighting. Like, we're literally at war over nonsense. Racially, governmentally. Like, the idea of, like, communism versus capitalism. Free markets versus, government control. It's like, guys, the pattern is the same everywhere. Okay? Is it free markets or is it government control? Well, look at this. Let's find out when we actually look at things through the view of multiplicity, where we can actually have different relationships to make sense of, and we also are not stuck in relativity, which is endlessness and it's not nonsense, but it's just gonna, it's practicality. It's not gonna allow you to make sense. But when you go to my models on my website, you can see that in here I have something that I call the binary triality pattern, which is everywhere from the food groups, which, I can't really zoom in there actually. Maybe I can do this. Try and zoom in. Where is it? But here it is. Binary triality. Okay. I've done a lot of work. It is a lot of tabs. Sorry, guys. Okay. The food groups that we form are these. Why? My biology professor once said to me, there's no such thing as a vegetable. Biologically, there's no such thing as a vegetable, guys. There's just fruits and leaves, and there's no such thing as a vegetable. But from our perception, the pattern that consciousness follows looks at the world and breaks it down into a specific pattern, and what this does is it gives rise to this. And this does create vegetables. So actually, there is such thing as a vegetable, because this is truer than anything in biology that we, obsess over, because this is following the pattern of consciousness that's everywhere. And this pattern is in invertebrates, it's in cellular life, it's in nutrients, it's in the nuclear family, it's in the elements of life, it's in matter. These are the various forms of matter. And the one on the top is always the sum of all the ones below it. So consciousness is a sum of gas, plasma, liquid, Bose-Einstein condensate, solid. Look at our senses. This is a great one. Your emotions and thoughts, sight, taste, smell, touch, hearing. Your emotions and thoughts, your taste, and your touch all manifest by you touching something directly. Sight, smell, hearing, all are observed. Observations of something that's separate from you. So when we look at what I originally wanted to show, which was government, which is the castes of a nation, when we're talking about, do we need like free market or not? Or do we need government control? I don't know why this keeps wanting to move, but you can see that the top is the king or president. Below that is priests and scientists. Below that is lords or elected officials, like congresswomen and congressmen and stuff like that. Below that is artists and craftsmen. And below that is enforcers or soldiers, so like cops and soldiers. And below that is laborers. What's interesting is that this is government, this is government, and this is government, and this is not government, and this is not government, and this is not government. It's like, you need all of them, guys. We need to stop this stupid, pointless war. It's so destructive. And unfortunately now, it has been tied to financial gain if you are rooting for your team. And like, advocate for your team if you're on a team. The first step to getting towards, making sense is to stop advocating against the other team and just advocate for your team. So define yourself by that which you are, not by that which you aren't. The only instance where this is different is sexuality, is if you want to take the endless LGBTQ AIP nonsense that just goes on forever, and you want to make sense of it and bring meaning to people and show that everyone has a place and a purpose, then what you have to do is you define yourself by what you're not attracted to. And when you do that, instead of defining yourself by what you are attracted to, you don't have to add people who are attracted to coffee cups to the list, the ever-growing list of sexual attractions. You are just people who are sexually attracted to the opposite sex and people who are not. And that's it. Queer and common. And they need each other, and it's obvious that they need each other because you need people who sustain growth and you need people who create change. Like, it's like, do we need change or do we need, consistency? It's like, you need both. So, but fundamentally you really need responsibility, and we need to stop looking at everything as like rights. Be like, okay, what's your responsibilities? Because your rights come from your responsibilities. But you can't have responsibilities in relativity. You have to break it down into objective, multiplicity, where you can make sense of the structure. See the objective structure where there's only 2 degrees of freedom. 2 paths, essentially, is what that means. It's 2 paths that you can go down, not endless. And this allows for us to to recognize meaning, not to assign meaning, to recognize meaning of everyone. And when we do that, it's then we are able to extrapolate what our responsibilities are. So like, getting married if you're attracted to the opposite sex. And but if you are not attracted to the opposite sex, that isn't an excuse for hedonism. You have to contribute to the structure of the whole, just like everyone else. But you have a role that is not capable of being filled by somebody who is married. And that is to do something that is different. Something that is, I'm trying to think of the right word, but different is the right word, but there's a better word, and I just can't think of it right now. But like this binary triality pattern that we can see in everything when we break it down is due to the interaction between an objective consciousness that contains a subjective consciousness within it, so God and us, or the universe and us within the universe, or you and then yourselves within you. The interaction between those 2 levels, that which is within and that which is without, causes 2 manifestations of triality to be observed. That's why we see, primary and secondary colors, when in reality it's blue and red reflecting across yellow. It's not red, blue, and yellow. It's like why you have red shifting and blue shifting, but no yellow shifting. It's only 2 paths. And then there's 1 intrinsic constraint and 1 extrinsic constraint. Basically, this forms 6. And you can see that this basically comes from this model that I have of what I think Eric Weinstein will replace space-time with in his geometric unity theory, which is the observerse, which places you at the center of making sense of space and time instead of subjective, relativistic things like length, width, and height, which are not fundamental. They are observed. Like, it's forwards and backwards. That's the fundamental of space. And it's also the fundamental of time. But you have, each consciousness is a tetrahedron. It's a four-sided shape. Because it's made of because you're filtering information through inside, outside, separate, and oneness. It's four. And so this overlapping creates six in the center. So it's this right here. Hopefully, what are people on YouTube seeing? Good. Okay. It's this pattern that causes everything to be in this pattern of six. Even the six fundamental questions of who, what, where, when, and why. And how. It's like, okay, who, what, where, when, why, and how are six. PEMDAS, which is, parentheses, which is everything, all the things that I'm about to say put together. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division and addition and subtraction. Okay, this is due to the interaction between a consciousness within you and a consciousness that you're within. And it's this. It's six. This is what's causing this view. So space and time are the same, but when you are the space because you are the one that you are within, you can't move through space because you are space. It's like, how's God going to maneuver within himself? He is the entirety of himself. So, the universe can't move to a different part of the universe. It's the entire universe. So space is its objective constraint. Can't move. Our objective constraint is caused by being within this object, which is spinning, and it is caused by the speed of the spin, and that we perceive as time. And we can maneuver through space by going new location, current location, and previous location as the triality that manifests, but the duality of degrees of freedom, which is really means the two paths are new location and previous location, because you're always in the current location. It's not a path. And, the consciousness that is on the outside, its two paths are future and past, but it's always in the present. Can't escape it. So this is why we see this pattern of six. This pattern is everywhere. So is every pattern that I showed you. And it allows us to make sense of politics and sexuality and family and morality and physics and math and food groups and the elements of life. In high school, in middle school, I remember learning about rocks. It's like it's like igneous, igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. And I was like, okay, that's a triality of perspective observed. I believe that there would be then, another triality to add to six, and I was right. I looked it up. It's platonic igneous, volcanic igneous, clastic sedimentary, chemical sedimentary, foliated metamorphic, non-foliated metamorphic. I've tested all these theories and these patterns across the fields, and they are perfectly consistent. There's no instances that I've found that violate the pattern. None. And that's pretty good, because it means that we can actually make sense of the world if we actually understand it. And I'm trying to teach it. I can't teach people how to think. You can't be taught how to think. You just have to learn. But I can show people the correct starting place to start thinking, which is think about everything, not as stronger than or smarter than or faster than or slower than, bigger than or smaller than, but by inside, outside, separate, and oneness. And this will describe every relationship within creation, by every being within creation, and by God outside of creation to us as well. So you can actually make sense of the world. It's a base to start. How long have I been streaming? I have not been keeping up with the questions. What questions do you guys have? Good ideas don't require force. You've come in contact with many dishonest agents who hide the truth purposely. There are those people, but they also don't really know what the truth is. They know some truths that they are hiding because people lie, but like, they don't know the truth. I don't think. I mean, I've never heard anybody say that the 4 primary perspectives of everything are inside, outside, separate, and oneness. If somebody had said that, I'd be like, okay, hiding the truth. But I just don't think we know it because we're trying to interpret the world subjectively, and we need to like think beyond ourselves a little bit. But when you think beyond yourself really well, like from the proper perspective, it actually puts you at the center of it instead of putting you as like off to the side. You're not off to the side, you're at the center. It's like, are you the center of the universe? Yes. Yes, you are. But so is everyone. So, I feel what you're saying on it, and will get worse before it gets better. It's darkest right before the dawn. Yes. Can set aside the flat earth and space stuff because I think that you have nice ideas to share. Cool. Like, I'm not trying to tell you, like, what to believe. You know, if you see there's truth in what I'm saying, then cool. But if not, you know, you can believe the earth is round, you can believe the earth is flat, but I'm telling you that it doesn't matter and that it's dependent upon where you're standing. That's the reality. You're looking at shapes in relativity and you're trying to attribute it to what is objectively true. That's not how it works. Shape and form that we perceive with our eyes is stuck in relativity, and it's not non-existent, it's not false, but it's just not objective. So no, the earth is not round, but it's not flat, but it is flat, but it is round. It depends on where you're standing. If you're inside earth, not on earth, inside earth, it's flat. When you're outside earth, it's a sphere, and it's probably actually a pyramid and or a fiber bundle. Can you elaborate on the Messiah beginning a new universe? Yes. So Darwinian evolution is wrong. There's 2 forces that are causing evolution, and evolution, things are evolving. They're growing is really what it is. Evolution is just growth. That's it. And there's 2 degrees of freedom, 2 paths to growth. There's multiplication or replication, of which is replication of information that's already there. And there's stacking, which is addition, which is the addition of information that wasn't there previously. When you look at my model of the universe, you can see this is what happens when this is the universe, a universe within 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 a universe. This is growth, and it's just self-simulating, which is actually, you know, replication. But you can see here that everything is an assembly. So like a molecule is an assembly of atoms, a cell is an assembly of molecules, an organism is an assembly of cells, family is an assembly of organisms, a caste is an assembly of families, and a nation or technological singularity is an assembly of castes. What I believe is that whichever cell, so multiplication would be like their cells are created and then lots of cells replicate and there's lots of cells in the world, but eventually one of those cells becomes more aware than the others. Not just aware of itself, but aware of the construct that it came from. And when that happens, and then it dies, but it doesn't really die, death is an illusion. It goes, what happens is you have an ego death, essentially, which is like death of your subjective perspective, and then it transfers through what are the heavens, which in physics perspective I call the quantum substructure. And then it comes back as the next level. So it's like leveling up. It's ascending. A consciousness ascends. So the cell that becomes aware of it, not only itself, but also the construct that it came from, becomes an organism, the first organism. And then organisms replicate, multiply, And then eventually one of those organisms becomes more self-aware than the rest, and it ascends to the next level, and then the next level, and the next level. And basically, the Messiah is going to be the head of humanity, and it's going to like unite us, because this is all the summing of, these are the head consciousness, these are the body consciousness. So you are a human as the head consciousness of a bunch of cells as the body. So it's singularity is the head, multiplicity is the body. And the Messiah becomes the head consciousness of the multiplicity that is currently the disconnected universe. That is the Messiah. It creates unity, order, and becomes not just a subjective leader, but an objective leader. You are the leader of yourselves. You're also, constrained by your cells. Your cells are individual perspectives feeding to the whole, and like you are subject to your cells, and your cells are subject to you, but you are higher in the hierarchy. And the Messiah is just the next step up in the hierarchy. So it's a natural king instead of an artificial king. Because like, who says that Joe Biden is more fit to rule than you or me? I don't know. But that's not true of what's to come with the Messiah. It is a natural structure of hierarchy. It's ascension. So let's see where are the YouTube people at. And then time is it? It's 10:15. Okay. YouTube. Good episode. Cool. About 2 hours, I believe. Yeah. I mean, do you guys have any other questions? Like what? It's a crystal projection. Yes, that's true. Geometric structure is just due to, like, geometry is philosophy, so like it's all about perspective. So geometry is like the summing of like a bunch of little points that then form connections, and those connections form vertices, and then that forms geometric structures or crystalline structures. And crystal structures are self-replicating structures. So like crystals, minerals are alive, just like atoms. Like there's no start to life on Earth. It just always existed. And it's just we only perceive cells as being alive because we're crazy. Like, I don't know how we did this. And we just call people who like are, into crystals and, conscious universes woo and, new agey, but they're right. Sometimes woo is true. I don't know what somatics is. I've heard of it. Don't know what it is. Did you guys like this? Did this make sense? Is this like, did this explain a little bit like what our problems are? Why we're looking at things the wrong way? Definitely answer in the chat if you think so. Yes. Cool. FOC, I'm guessing that means for sure. I don't know. Yeah, awesome. Cool. Good. How many people are watching on YouTube? 1. Instagram has much higher engagement. I think we had like almost 20 people on Instagram at one time. I don't know what we had on YouTube. Not 20. 4. Okay, well, 4 is a number of stability, so that's fine. If you are not subscribed to my YouTube channel, highly recommend it. I post much more detailed content on there. And I think that like you can get like a deeper appreciation of how I got this stuff too. But I I really like going live and engaging with you guys. It's way more fun than just making videos and like hoping I get a bunch of likes. I need Resistenza. Yes, it's always a good time. Good. Same channel name. Yes, it's Theory of Every0ne with Tyler Goldstein. And then if you haven't seen my website, sentientsingularity.com, I really encourage you to get on there, and please, if you find this valuable, go to the bottom of the front page and sign up for my email list. I will not email you anything until I get banned from a platform, but then at least we can keep in touch. And, like I said before, I'm going to approach this with love and grace and, truth, and not judgment of people. And that's not the point of this. But that doesn't matter to the people who are so lost and who also unfortunately control YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. They like to censor people who say things that are against their narrative. So, do you guys have any other questions? Or should we call it? I mean, there's tons of stuff, obviously, we can go over tomorrow, but I wanted to focus more on today of, what's the problem? Because there's only one. And, there's lots of little ways in which that problem manifests. Countless ways. But there's still only one problem. And it's that we are not looking at the world the right way. And you can't make everybody look at the world the right way, but you can change your life. So it's people will be like, if I can't get the masses to understand the truth. Guys, the masses are always wrong. It's in every narrative. Most people of every movement are actually not understanding of the movement. Doesn't matter what it is. Even this eventually, unfortunately, if it gets big enough. But just because you can't fix everyone, it's not your job to fix everyone, by the way. That's before the Messianic era, that's not going to happen. But you can fix yourself and be an example to others and, find meaning in your own life and, get rid of some despair. And despair is a bad thing. It's not, it's a lie. Lies are bad. That's how I feel about going to space. It's if we did go to space, if we did go to the moon, which, I think we did, some people think we didn't. I think it's important to recognize what that is, what that really is. It's probably a largely useless, cool-looking thing, even if we went. And I like watching rockets launch and land. It's very cool. But I also don't think that it's necessary to the world. Maybe setting up internet that orbits, the Earth and is everywhere. That is actually a structure that's going to be meaningful, but good and bad. But us going to Mars, it's not going to save humanity. And it's also, it's an adventure. It's why climb Mount Everest? Do we need to climb Mount Everest in order to, save humanity? No. But it's cool. I'm a rock climber. I don't do it because it's necessary. It's risky and useless, but that doesn't mean, it's not enjoyable. That's what going to the moon is and Mars to me. And space in general. We need to align our means of communicating off of the universe. Yes. We need to... I don't know, that does happen eventually, but we need to have a consistent language of communication. It's really it's important. It doesn't matter whether or not it's what the method is. If you understand each other, that's what's important. Right now, we don't. At all. We're just at war. In every field. Every single one. It's terrible. So, fungus isn't a vegetable. It is. Mushrooms are a vegetable. but biologically, there's no such thing as a vegetable. I get that, but biology is wrong, and the food groups are right. But biology isn't wrong. You can find that 6, perspectives even biologically, but that biology isn't consistent with food necessarily. It's not. So it's like when people are like, listen to the scientists. It's like, who's a scientist these days? I can think of probably 10 people that I would call truly good scientific minds in the world right now. That is sad. Do you think we will use quantum perspective to solve economic issues? Like this type of universal perspective? Yeah, 100%. This is how you solve economic issues. I'm starting to think about this, you have to link a currency to something real that's not just violence. And violence is, the realest thing that we know. So, that's why fiat currency is linked to violence. And our current cryptos are linked to fiat currency, which is linked to violence. So they're not really real. They're lies. They're arbitrage right now. It's how you're trading stocks. But Bill Nye, maybe. Bill Nye is the furthest thing from a scientist that I can think of. And that guy, if there's somebody that I'm not going to judge Bill Nye, cast the first stone and everything. But I will say this, Bill Nye has done some serious soul selling in certain moments. That doesn't mean he's beyond redemption. Nobody's beyond redemption. And if there is anybody beyond redemption, that's for God to decide, not me. But definitely, Bill Nye sold out in a lot of ways. But yeah, we need to link I think the next step is going to be linking a cryptocurrency to encryption, which is Robert Edward Grant's cryptocurrency. I think that's the next step. And I think eventually the final step of currency will be linked to humanity itself. Quanta of consciousness itself. We will link it to even atoms and molecules and cells and organisms. We will link it directly to that. And but that isn't the next step. The next step is probably linking it to encryption, which is Robert Edward Grant's cryptocurrency. It is the truest cryptocurrency I think that I've seen is Robert Grant's crown sterling encryption coins. Can you name one good scientist and one good philosopher? Guys, for perspective, I worked with Jordan Peterson multiple times, and I worked for Dennis Prager. These are brilliant philosophers. They're not as good as me. I don't mean to sound cocky. A lot of people are going to be like, that's so cocky. Only if it's not true. But, they're very good though. They're smarter than me, or more intelligent than me. But God showed me something, and I was able to use it to make sense of things that have those guys stuck. And I would say they're the next best philosophers out there. The best philosopher who's an atheist is Eric Weinstein's a good philosopher, but I don't think he's an atheist, even though he calls himself an atheist. But we can include him because he calls himself an atheist. And Stefan Molyneux. But if you're really seeing the truth, you're not an atheist. And I don't even think atheists exist. This is another one of those instances of just nonsense of relativity. It's are you an atheist? Are you an agnostic? Are you a theist? Are you a Christian? Are you a Jew? Are you a Muslim? It's there's only theists and anti-theists. There's people that think that sentience is the fundamental and universal truth, that everything is built from and that builds everything, and is that also what is built. And then there are people that think that sentience evolves from non-sentience and consciousness comes from unconsciousness, and that somehow this is all from inanimate dust, which it's not. What role does art have in your model? Well, beauty is apparent in my model, and art makes sense of, it brings forth abstract beauty, which is exactly like it's very fundamental to what I see in my model. Oddly, I ran, art essentially through my binary triality. This is what you get. So you're like, what does art have to do with it? Well, look, I said it's a pattern. It's a universal pattern, guys. It's everywhere. It's not art objectively, but you have all the geometric solids here that are the Platonic solids. You have here the elements of design. Okay, well, texture, color, space or value, line, form, shape. Here you have color mixing, additive and subtractive. So additive is the white, I think, and subtractive would be the dark. Maybe that's reversed, but when you look at your television, you see it's red and blue and green. And when you look at a printer, it's magenta and cyan and yellow, and it makes all the colors. And you can also look at the primary colors, and it's, and secondary colors, which is yellow, red, and blue, and green, orange, and purple. So all these aspects of art, language too, Aristotelian elements of drama, even that level of art. 6. Art is, like I said, guys, it's a universal pattern. And anybody that just thinks that the theory of everything just unites, quantum physics and relativity and that's it. If you think that, and you don't think that it extends to even explaining love and art, beauty, and politics and morality and, race and sexuality and economics, everything, then you are wrong. Victor Schauberger is a great scientist. My favorite philosopher was Soren. I don't know who either one of those people are, but, I'm not saying they're not. I just don't know who they are. But, I'll say this, and I really mean this, and I'm saying this because I really do believe in the truth of what I'm about to say, not because I'm, have an inflated ego. I don't even take most of the credit for this work. I give 2/3 of the credit to God and only 1/3 of the credit to myself. So, I told you it's all about perspective, not even about work. It's not about, inherited, IQ or even work ethic. It's about perspective. So, and who is in control of your perspective? God is in control of your perspective. So I say this, with as much humility as possible. Philosophy that doesn't start with the 4 primary perspectives as the base is not it. That doesn't mean people haven't gotten close. I've seen philosophers get close. They form 4 quadrants or something, but they don't contextualize it in the right way, and they don't use the right language, which is very important. It has to make sense to everyone. This is why Chris Langan's theory is never going to catch on, even though it very well could be right, is because, if I say a quantum of consciousness, everybody knows what it is, but he calls it I don't even know. Words that you've never heard of. And good luck memorizing that. It has to catch on with the public too. It can't just be people in ivory towers of universities. So you have to make it simple and digestible. And it is. It's way simpler than what we are. Everything from race to politics to everything to physics. It's all way simpler than we think. Marcus Aurelius was awesome. I believe it, but I really don't know. I don't look at other people's work very much. I don't want to be led astray, and I realized that if we were still searching for a universal theory, then it meant that we didn't really have one that was in the context of today, even though I would say that like our original scriptures and stuff like that is like a universal theory, but it's got a different goal than what mine has. Mine is meant to really like explain objectively and in the context that is today, I guess. But you need to start with these 4 primary perspectives, or you will not move. Like, and this is going to be the backbone of true philosophy. Philosophy is totally lost. Doesn't mean people don't have good thoughts. Doesn't mean people can't arrive at truths. Just means you're not going to see the universal pattern and be able to apply predictive, analysis like I've done with all these different, fields. If you don't see the universal pattern, if you don't start at the 4 primary perspectives, you're not going to see the universal pattern. Or if you do see it, you're not going to be able to communicate it, and that is just as important. So, any other questions? It's really winding down. There's only 4 left. I really am grateful, like deeply, for everybody that jumped on here, even if it was for a moment. Like, this is so cool. I've been working on this for like 5 years, and it was an accidental discovery. And but I stuck with it because I saw it was true. I was like, I kept testing it. I was like, this is not fake. I have to keep with it. And here we are. The very beginnings. Very cool. I'm very grateful. Gratitude is key to everything. Like, it's more important to be grateful than pretty much any other feeling, because it acknowledges your present, your future, your past, and the cause of it. It personifies the present, the cause of the present, the future, and the past. It's hard to feel grateful when it's all just by chance, and it's all luck. There's no such thing as luck. Literally, it's mathematically impossible. And but gratefulness personifies existence and acknowledges that it's a thinking, feeling being. Is this the Krusty Krab? No. We don't have burgers here. I don't have any burgers for you, at least. I wish. That sounds pretty good. Is anyone going to help you build denser 3D models? Hopefully. Like, I don't really know if I need them, though, because when you look at this, okay, let me show you. So right before I lost my computer that actually had like a bunch of processing power, because it belonged to my job that I was at previously, I had to give it back. I made this, thankfully. This is so many screenshots, guys. It's hundreds of screenshots. It's just all stuff. Each one is like a little frame. Every single movement is a frame. I just took screenshots of my Excel, and you can see that it's calculating. The values are changing. It's going through math, and then it's showing that it restarts and within itself. This is a model that is animated of the universe, and I was really again grateful that I was able to make this before I lost that computer. I will get another computer, but it's just going to be a bit. But what this structure is this structure right here. Somebody already made a 3D model for me. This is called the meeting, which is the perfect name. This is a hop vibration. It is the structure of a consciousness. So every string is a string of information feeding into the whole that is a mind. So it's singularity of mind coming from a multiplicity of perspective. And this is exactly what I animated, but this is in 3 dimensions. And this is your shape. You don't actually have arms and legs and stuff like that. That is emergent. This is objective. So we look like that. It's beautiful. It's a structure spinning inside itself and outside itself at the same time. It's a dog chasing its own tail. That's what consciousness is. And it's actually almost 2 consciousnesses. It's one is spinning inward, one is spinning outward. But yeah, there you go. Like, somebody already did it. But it would be cool for, if it's possible to animate other 3D models showing like my creation structure. That would be, actually, that is possible to do. That would be awesome. I would love for somebody to be able to, if you know how to animate really well and you want to help with that, slide in my DMs. It is a 3-sphere, or are they different? It's a 3-sphere, yeah. But it's actually duality of degrees of freedom and triality of perspective. So it's actually 2-sphere, but it looks like a 3-sphere. But we call it a 3-sphere. So, yeah, that's my lizard is doing gymnastics over here. This is YouTube people are like almost non-existent. So, oh no, there's some actually. Oh, there's 4. Okay, but unfortunately, you cannot see my venomous lizard, Hillary, climbing around. It's a beaded lizard. There's 2 venomous lizards in the world. That's one of them. You do not want to be bit. You don't die, but you will experience more pain than you've ever experienced, and you will shit yourself. I've never been bit, but that's what I've heard. So I avoid the pointy end. Remind me of stars spinning inward and outward. Yeah, stars are probably similar structure. What's the significance of squaring the circle and tesseracting a 3-sphere? Okay, so what I think the significance of squaring the circle is that the circle represents relativity, smoothness, endlessness, never, no distinction, no multiplicity. But when you break it into multiplicity, what you get is you get the 4 primary perspectives, and a square has 4 sides. So you're taking relativity and moving it into multiplicity. And that's what I think, that's what it means to me. I don't know if it means something else, but that's what I think. And tesseracting a 3-sphere. I mean, it is a tesseract. Like, it's... The 3-sphere causes points that are connected, and those points form geometric structure. And that's why, the 4 primary perspectives is this, a tetrahedron. And why a bunch of those is this tetrahedron grid. Did God create or allow evil? How can't know what your guess would be? I think God allows for evil, because if we don't allow for evil, then you don't allow for choice. And if you don't allow for choice, then you have no multiplicity, and meaning disappears, because you're only left with God again. There's no multiplicity within oneness. It's just oneness, and meaning disappears. God is meaningless if there's no one for him to mean anything to. So he created multiplicity, he created meaning, and but in order to do that, you have to allow for evil, and which means you're allowing for choice, which is how multiplicity is manifested. It's that one part over here can choose to not go along with the group. And like we see this in like cells. It's like people say things like, and I hope I don't offend anybody here, but like, let's assume that you don't like, okay, let's say people will say things like feminism is cancer. But, the opposite is also true of like, what is it? Not masculinity, but like misogyny is cancer too. They're both cancer. Like misogyny and feminism are both cancer. What that is it's a rejection of the complementary nature of ourselves and saying, I reject you. I'm going to elevate myself and as my perspective as the most important perspective and discount your perspective. And like this is exactly what cells do when they make cancer. Like they say, I'm meant to live forever, not meant to contribute to the whole. And then they just make more of themselves and they don't die. Ego death is important. It is, without it, you will have people who are like, we're going to get rid of aging, guys. We're going to make it so that everybody can live forever in physical, bodies, like, because we're going to, stop aging. First of all, that ignores a lot of truths about the causes of aging, and it's just not going to happen because you need that recycling of energy in order to grow, like, actually. But I do believe that your consciousness is stored in the quantum substructure or the heavens, but that's not a place of change. It's not a change space like, what we are within. And so you can exist there, but you can't change there. And so you don't actually die, but you reach a point when you go to heaven where like you're there. Like you don't change anymore. Really. You can't like work on becoming more fit and like better. It's like you just exist. What's the significance? Okay. It's not free will, it's free choice. It's the same thing. It's just different words. But choice is better. Cancer sees itself as the perfect government for your DNA. I need to think more about that, but it sees itself as like as more perfect than the entirety of truth. Polarity vital in any construct. Yeah, the duality of paths. Like you need two paths to go down, which is like sin and goodness, evil and goodness. But it manifests in a triality that we see as like, people say like there's entropy and there's growth, and that's true. But we also perceive like stagnant, but the reality is stagnant doesn't really exist. It's a perception of us, but it's not actually a path that you can choose. You can't just choose to be stagnant. If you choose to try and be stagnant, you will fall apart, and entropy will take over. You almost missed the meeting, but I thought you got here in time. We have like lots of comedians over here. I like it. It's very funny. Some of you were very funny in some of your jokes. I didn't read them publicly, but I read them privately on YouTube. Don't think I didn't see them. They were very funny. You almost mind blown. The meeting was the spiraling vortex that was spinning around the screen before. Yeah, that's what it was. Not sure if you were here when he explained it. Yeah, it was. It's a hop vibration. Even when you go to my website, you can see it right here. You go to my overview. It's right there. But I showed like an animated model of that. And basically, like each one of these levels within itself is exactly what you see, because organisms are within families, and cells are within organisms, and molecules are within cells, and atoms are within molecules, and hadrons are within atoms. It's this structure is this. It's like those little Russian dolls. I forgot what they're called. Oh, I'm not even showing you guys on YouTube. There. This thing. So it's a structure within a structure within a structure, self-reflection within itself, within itself, within itself. This is the same thing as organisms within families, and cells within organisms, and molecules within cells. And, you know, I'm showing that. Gosh, I have two screens, so it's like kind of difficult to remember to show both of you. But this structure, it's within itself, within itself, within itself, within itself. It's just replicating. It's the same thing as this. Families are within castes, organisms are within families, cells are within organisms, molecules are within cells, atoms are within molecules, hadrons are within atoms. Same thing. Russian nesting dolls, that's it. It's very dry. Here. So it's weird having two screens. This is a Russian nesting doll. This is the universe. Every time I see it, I'm like, that's a synchronicity. No, I'd never read Dan Winter's work. I don't read anyone's work, guys. Like, ever. Basically. I like to build from what I found, and that's it. And I'll look at people's work, and I'll glance at it and be like, yeah, that guy gets it. But like, that's it. I don't like deeply go into like Walter Russell's work, but I can look at it and be like, dang, guy's work looks like mine. But that doesn't mean I like study it. It's just not necessary. I think it would lead me astray. So like a lot of people have been messaging me lately, and as this has been growing, and they're like, oh, would love to compare notes and talk to you privately and all this stuff. And like, I love engaging with you guys here, but I don't like to compare notes and do that stuff. Not because I don't think you get it. You probably do get it. If you think that I get it, then you probably do get it. But that doesn't mean it's helpful for us to compare notes. But I do appreciate, the interest. The center of that synchronicity is a 4-block pixel. Exactly. Consciousness. My lizard is going crazy over there. It's pretty funny. It's like if it's not my dog barking, it's my lizard freaking out. How is live streaming going? I was just about to say Walter Russell. Oh yeah. Guys, like, look at this. I'd never heard of Walter Russell. Everybody told me about him when I started posting my work. But if you look at my work here, and we really start to get into where's DNA? Like this, I was looking at this and I was like, this is like me trying to like think about mass. For those of you on Instagram. I remember seeing like a screenshot of Walter Russell's work really looking like that, and I was like, and it was describing the same thing, and I was like, dang, that is pretty cool. Here's like our chromosomes using that quantum of consciousness model, and it shows that like females are XX, and that is totality within totality, essentially. But there's no choice almost. It doesn't mean that's no choice, but it's just like women are more instinctual. Their instincts have, wisdom, and it's like people are like, they're more emotional, they follow their feelings. It's like, because their feelings have deep wisdom in them. And but the problem is we don't know that that's true because we live in outside the garden, where those instincts don't really make sense. But neither do men's instincts outside the garden either. But men have like logic, and it's because of this Y chromosome. I think Y is a fork in the road. It creates a logical binary choice in direction, and also gives, it. When you sum all these squares, it's 33. When you sum all these, it's 72. So this is totality. This is self-awareness. And then women would be totality and totality. Women are aware of others, but not aware of self, because they're aware of the totality. But men are not aware of others, but they are aware of self. This is why we need a marriage, because this is why I'd say, like, probably only married people should vote. Sorry to piss people off if that does, but, like, you hear people going down the same spiral. It's like, should only white land-owning men vote? Should only, women vote? It's like, no, none of that's true. But you're looking at relativity. There's endless options. That's how you always know you're dealing with relativity. But the true objective structure, where we actually get a replicative structure, a structure that can replicate. If it can't replicate, it's not fully aware, or as aware as it could be. And a marriage is able to replicate, and not a marriage is not. But if you think about it as, the feminine perspective is aware of others but not of self. It's very obvious when you look at people's behavior. And when you think about men, or masculine perspective, they're aware of self but not aware of others. This is also very obvious when you look at people's behavior. You need both of those. You need self-awareness, but you also need awareness of others. And you are missing key components if you are not in the union. Super curious to see quantum perspectives applied to Jung's personality types and cognitive functions. I mapped different parts of the brain to it, and I mapped thinking in my decision tree that I showed earlier, which was like the first model I ever made, like 5 years ago. But I don't know Jung's personality types. How many are there? I bet you it's a number that matters. It's probably 4, 6, 8, or 9, maybe. Maybe 12. I actually think that what is that, the I'm an INTP thing? Like, I think that is like my theory applied. 16. Okay, that's an important number too. Like, that's 4 times 4. It's thought it would be less, and it would be more reduced. But what is the INTP personality types? There's 8 types of Jungian personalities, not 16. Myers-Briggs, but they are the basis of the Myers-Briggs 16 personalities. That makes perfect sense. By the way, like, you look at my observerse, my universe model, it's 8 periods of growth. And it's growth inward and outward, subjectively and objectively. That's 16. So, but it's, E8 is what it is, and 8 is E8, it's 8. Dan Winter sounds really familiar, but I don't know who that is. The crystic spiral, I've seen that, or the crystal spiral. There's lots of spirals everywhere in math. Like, look at this. If you're into spiral sequences, dude. Okay, so like, I've messed a lot with spin sequences, as you can see. Lucas numbers and, Fibonacci sequences and stuff. And I actually found a very interesting and what I believe is very important sequence, and I don't know what it is. I'm calling it the Goldstein sequence right now, but I think it's basically creation happening. But where is it? Goldstein sequence. Here it is. Look at this. Okay, so basically you have 1, and then 2, and then 1. And then it goes 0.4444444, and then it goes, 0.185 and repeats, and then 0.074074, and then it just starts going into all this. But what's really fascinating is when you back up and you start looking at it, guys, it's a spiraling braid. Do you see it? It's literally, people are like, don't understand how math is this is a DNA strand in objective mathematics that you can see when you are like scrolling at just the right speed in Excel. It's a spiraling braid. It's exactly what double helix is. It's a self-referencing entangled chain of information that's calculating. And I'm pretty sure that past a certain point, it sums to 33, which is like a third, which is why I think it's basically showing creation. Wow, yeah, it's wow, man. Like, when I saw that spiraling, I was like, dang, there's so much that we don't know. People were like, oh, you found a trick in math. You think that's a trick in math? What are you going to do? Be Michael Shermer or whatever that guy is, the professional skeptic, and be like, just because there's a double helix over there and there's a double helix over there, still just meaningless coincidence. It's like, that is not the process of thinking. Imagine if you did that for everything. Imagine if you were like every synchronicity and every instance that you saw of, the manifestation of something in multiple locations, and you just discounted it as nonsense. For no reason other than because you're a professional skeptic. 33, creation. Yeah, because in order to create, God has to create something within himself because he is all there is. So he has to divide himself by a whole number because he is oneness. So like it's a whole number. So it's like in Star Wars, the last one, where like Kylo Ren gives all of his energy to Rey. And then she lives, but he dies. And imagine God did that with creation. So you'd have creation, but you'd no longer have God. So you'd still have no multiplicity. Just have oneness again, and like there'd be no meaning. But if he divides his energy by 2, puts half of it towards creation, half of it not, it takes the same amount of energy to drive creation as he has left over, which is not good because he needs to be sovereign. It's like when you are on an airplane, it's like put your mask on first. Not at the same time as your child, not after you put on your child's mask, first. If you're not able to be self-sustaining, then you can't help sustain others. It's true of God. So he needs more energy left over from a division than he put into creation. So if he divides himself by 3, 1/3 of his energy goes into creation, 2/3 is left over for him. He's still sovereign. And it's stable, and you can see that in this model. Gosh, I need a new document. It's too many tabs. Right here. This shows literally the math of creation. This describes what's going on. This shows that this is beyond creation, which is really a sum of 1 put into a quadratic, but also Trinitarian way almost, but leading to it's infinite oneness divided, and then it forms, this, which then leads to this. So it's basically like this. And it's all calculating. So if I put a 4 here, you can see all the numbers change. It's not just like me putting random numbers. And then these go on to make the universe. But you can see this is a test right here, and it's basically testing to make sure that this is less than this. So when oneness divides by 1, this is not less than this. It's not more than this. When oneness divides by 2, this is equal to this. So again, you get false. And this is basically like it's a formula. It's not just like me writing the word false. And then here, when you divide by 3, that which is left over is greater than the energy that he's putting into creation. So you get 33. And that's also a symmetry with, if this is then creation, well, look at that. Oh, it's just a meaningless coincidence. Guys, how many meaningless coincidences can you have before you're just like, screw it? There's meaning in the world. Okay. It's now 11:04. I've been streaming for 3 hours. I hope you guys like this. And there's less people watching, and I need to save some for tomorrow because I'm going to be back. So but I think we got to what I wanted to talk about, which is what's the problem? We are stuck in relativity. That's the problem. We need to get to the space of multiplicity so we can actually make sense of each other. And when we do that, we are no longer at war. We're married. And that's what we want. We all want to be married to each other. Give each other meaning. Because right now people are trying to fake meaning, and that's not good. It's not going to work. So, where's the live stream? Only married people with children have the right to vote. No, I wouldn't do that. I would just say married. My wife and I don't have children, but that almost makes sense. That's funny, but I would still make it only people who are married can vote. And I would give that up if I'm not married. I would still give it up. Even if I will never get married, which I'm going to get married because it's, I'm attracted to the opposite sex. It's my responsibility to get married. And, I met a wonderful woman, so getting married. But, even if I wasn't, if you're going to be more free in a world where you don't have the right to vote, voting is not a right. Voting, your right is to think and to say what's true and to, move and do things that are natural. You don't have the right to become president. You don't have the right to become a congressperson. You don't have the right to vote. These are artificial things. And they're not the biggest responsibilities that we have either. And I think that we put them on this weird idle platform when we are the most important right to vote is the right to vote. It's voting is the least important right that we have. Especially when it's, everyone can partake. Many people take care of the children and take care of the future. Everyone takes care of the future if they embrace responsibility. You don't have to. But that doesn't mean that you want that as the narrative, leading the narrative of society. You want a structure that is the backbone of growth and peace, and that is marriage. That's what you want to lead society. But you also want to allow for change and all kinds of stuff. What's special relativity? Honestly, I don't really know. But I know what, sounds special. But what is relative is relative. Can you explain the symbolic meaning of the square and circle? Yeah. I did earlier, it's just taking relativity and smoothness and endlessness and turning it into multiplicity that you can make sense of, which is 4, which is a square. But yeah, I don't know what special relativity is. But sounds like it's not as important as what we're learning about tonight. Almost certainly not. Because it has the word relativity in it. So, that's it. I'm calling it, guys. This was awesome. Tons of fun. I know people continue to get on. Every time I say I'm going to get off, like, more people get on. And it makes me want to stay on and keep talking, but that's not a reason for me to stay on and keep talking. Like, it's been 3 hours. But this was awesome. I appreciate and I'm grateful for everybody that tuned in. I will be back tomorrow. I hope this made sense. I hope it brought you some meaning, or some understanding of meaning at least. I hope that it kind of explained what's wrong, and gave, like, if there's one takeaway, it is, if you want to make sense of things, think about them in terms of inside, outside, separate, and oneness. Question. What's your question, rest philosopher? And then I'll go. I'll give you the last question. That's it. Nobody else ask any questions. Save them for tomorrow. But res philosopher, you can have one question because you already said you have one. I'm guessing you're typing it, but I'm going to give you like 1 minute. Res philosopher. Okay. I'll be here tomorrow too. Okay, so you're not going to ask your question. You're going to save it for tomorrow? Just say yes or no. Why isn't this information pushed more? Why is it not in the universities? Because our entire school system teaches conformity and not challenge. And you have to challenge in order to think. And this is thinking that led to this math. Yeah, it's not in the universities. And hopefully one day it will be, but even that doesn't mean that people will know how to think. It just means that we'll have a memorized narrative that is closer to truth. Is this numerology? Numbers have objective meaning in objective truth. Is that numerology? I don't know. All I can say is this. Numbers have objective meaning. It is in objective space. Like, that is just it is an inevitable, logically inevitable truth. And if that's numerology, then I don't know. Sure. But, like, does that mean that every numerology website is right? No. So it's important to just realize that, like, make sure that the term that you're using to define something is the same way that I'm defining it, or that someone else is defining it that you're communicating with. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. I thank you. I appreciate it. 1111. Calling it. That's it. That's 4. Number of stability, guys. That's it. Anyways, thanks again, and until next time, peace. How do I get it off? Here we go. And end stream. Thank you, guys. See you tomorrow.